Jake earned $40,000 a year. 5 years later, he earned $120,000. And somehow, he still felt broke. Not poor, not unemployed, not struggling to survive. Just constantly behind. The bills were paid. The paycheck was larger than ever, yet every month felt strangely familiar. The same financial pressure, the same stress, the same feeling that there was never quite enough money. At first, Jake blamed his salary. Then he got a raise, nothing changed. A few years later, he got another raise, still nothing changed. Then he crossed into six figures. And for the first time, he asked a question that would completely change the way he thought about money. If earning more wasn't solving the problem, what exactly was the problem? The answer reveals one of the biggest misconceptions in personal finance. Because there are 3 reasons some people stay broke, no matter how much they earn. And the third reason is the one most people never see. I'm Arthur, and today we're exploring why. Let's begin with the first reason. Reason number 1, lifestyle inflation. At first glance, lifestyle inflation doesn't sound dangerous. In fact, it sounds completely reasonable. You work hard, you earn more, your quality of life improves. What's wrong with that? Nothing. Until the improvements begin growing as quickly as the income. When Jake earned $40,000, he lived in a modest apartment. When he reached $60,000, he upgraded. When he reached $80,000, he upgraded again. The car improved, the furniture improved, the subscriptions increased, the vacations became slightly nicer, the food became more convenient. None of these decisions were irresponsible. That's what makes lifestyle inflation so dangerous. It rarely looks like a mistake. Each individual upgrade feels justified, and often it is. The problem only becomes visible when you step back and look at the pattern. Because while Jake's income doubled, his obligations doubled too. And suddenly the extra money wasn't extra anymore. It became normal. This happens because humans adapt remarkably fast. The things we once viewed as luxuries quickly become expectations. The apartment that felt exciting eventually feels average. The car that felt special eventually feels ordinary. The raise that felt life-changing eventually feels insufficient. Psychologists call this adaptation. Personal finance experiences it as lifestyle inflation. And it explains why earning more money doesn't always create more financial freedom. But surprisingly, lifestyle inflation isn't the biggest problem. The second reason is even more important. Reason number 2, income creates possibilities, not security. This is where many people become confused. We tend to think security comes from income, but security often comes from what income leaves behind. Let's go back to Jake. By the time he reached $120,000 a year, most people assumed he was financially comfortable. And on paper, he was, until life happened. One unexpected repair, one medical bill, one family emergency, one job disruption, and suddenly the situation looked very different. Because despite earning more than ever, Jake still had very little margin, no meaningful emergency fund, limited savings, no real buffer between himself and uncertainty. And that's when he realized something uncomfortable. The problem was never the size of the paycheck. The problem was the absence of protection. Many people confuse earning power with financial strength, but they are not the same thing. A professional athlete can earn millions and still go broke. A doctor can earn 6 figures and still live paycheck to paycheck. A lawyer can earn more than most households and still feel trapped. Because income creates possibilities. But possibilities alone do not create stability. Stability comes from preparation, from savings, from resilience, from having enough room to absorb life's inevitable surprises. And this leads us to the third reason, the most important one. The reason many people never escape the cycle. Reason number 3, they protect income instead of protecting margin. This is the distinction that changes everything. Most people focus obsessively on how much money enters their lives. Few people focus on how much remains. But wealth is not built when money arrives. Wealth is built when money stays. Let's imagine two people. One earns $50,000 per year. The other earns $150,000. Most people immediately assume the second person is becoming wealthier. But what if the first person spends $40,000 and the second spends $148,000? Who is actually building financial strength? The answer is obvious. Yet this mistake happens every day because people chase income while neglecting margin. Margin is the space between earning and spending, the space between obligation and opportunity. The space where savings grow, investments grow, options grow, freedom grows. Without margin, every setback feels expensive. Without margin, every emergency becomes a crisis. Without margin, every financial decision feels urgent. But once margin appears, something remarkable happens. People begin making decisions differently. They become less reactive, less desperate, more patient, more intentional. They stop asking, "Can I survive this?" and start asking, "What's the smartest way to handle this?" That sounds like a small shift. It's not. Because nearly every strong financial future is built on thousands of moments exactly like that. Moments where people choose deliberately instead of reacting emotionally. Moments where they compare options instead of accepting the first solution available. Moments where they protect the gap, the margin, the space that creates future freedom. And this is where Jake's story finally changes. Not when he earned more, not when he reached six figures, not when he upgraded his lifestyle. His transformation began when he started protecting margin. Part of every raise stayed a raise. Part of every bonus became savings. Part of every increase in income strengthened his future rather than expanding his expenses. The change wasn't dramatic. Nobody noticed. His neighbors didn't notice. His coworkers didn't notice. Social media certainly didn't notice, but his financial life noticed. Slowly, he built an emergency fund, then larger savings, then investments, then options, then confidence. And eventually, something happened that felt almost impossible a few years earlier. His financial stress started shrinking, not because he became rich, because he became resilient. That's the hidden truth behind wealth. The people who eventually build meaningful financial freedom are rarely the people who simply earn the most. They are often the people who understand what happens after they earn more. They understand that income is important, but behavior determines outcomes. They understand that raises can build wealth, or they can build expenses. They understand that financial security isn't created by a paycheck. It's created by the relationship between earning, spending, saving, and investing over long periods of time. And most importantly, they understand that wealth is not built by protecting income. It's built by protecting margin, because wealth doesn't begin when someone becomes rich. It begins when someone gains enough stability to make decisions from a position of choice rather than fear. And for many people, that journey starts with a surprisingly simple realization. Earning more money and becoming financially stronger are not the same thing. If you found this perspective valuable, subscribe and join me for the next exploration into money, wealth, and human behavior. See you in the next video.